back at it again with the X-Men. That was a terrible intro. I apologize. Anyway, what is up, guys? This is the friendly film fan Jacob Jones here, bringing you another video review, continuing in our review of the X-Men franchise. This time, X2 X-Men United, the sequel to the very successful X-Men movie that came out in 2000. And this movie steps it up on just about every level imaginable. Character work, story, the tension, the emotional moments, the character work, almost everything is better in this movie than it was in the last movie. The last one was really good. So, let's get into that, and before, I have to warn you, this review is going to be spoiler-filled, so that is a spoiler warning to anyone who has not seen this movie, because this movie came out in, what, 2002, 4 maybe? So, this movie begins, and we find ourselves in one of those opening monologues, again, that Xavier is doing. It goes into the title sequence, and it leads into what is going to eventually become the theme song for the X-Men franchise, and I say that because it's been used in 1, 2, 3 movies now. It's been used in X2, Days of Future Past, and now in X-Men Apocalypse. The soundtrack is on Spotify, and I listened to it to see if that music was there, and it most definitely is. So, this is a great theme that we're starting off on. Then we go into the little Eye of Cerebro, and we go, and our first scene that we get in this entire movie is probably the best X-Men character introduction ever. We get to see Nightcrawler infiltrate the White House and almost kill the President of the United States. He's all like just disappearing and like kicking dudes in the face, and they're flying up, and then he disappears and kicks another dude who's like behind him. It's a really, really cool sequence. The introduction to Nightcrawler is one of my favorite opening sequences of any movie ever. It's so cool to see. After that, we see Logan on the search for his past, on the search for answers to his past that Xavier had alluded to at the end of the previous movie. He's at Alkali Lake, he doesn't see anything there, but Xavier told him that's probably where he could find his answers, but he doesn't see anything there, and there's really nothing going on. So we cut to a little museum tour that the X-Men that are still at the school are doing, and Jean and Cyclops and Storm are there, and they're keeping up with the kids. And there's a bit of an instance between John, who's also Pyro, and Bobby and Rogue, and we kind of get to see a more extensive use of Xavier's powers, and we get to see really just how powerful he can be. And he freeze frames like everyone in this museum except for the mutants, and Pyro has like burned this guy's sleeve, and Xavier's just like, the next time you feel like showing off, don't, because Bobby stopped the guy from burning or whatever, and Xavier's like, we don't do that here. So Logan returns to the mansion, so it's a big, warm welcome for everybody. Everybody welcomes him back, and Rogue goes to see him, and he finds out that she's dating Bobby, and he's like, so how do you two? And Bobby's like, we're still working on that. The dialogue in this movie is even better than the dialogue in the last movie. He comes back and he has to watch over the kids for a little bit because Xavier heard about the attack on the president at the museum, and he sends Storm and Jean to go investigate with the jet and bring this mutant in before more problems happen for the mutant community and the world at large. So he sends them. Scott is busy with the professor following up on a visit to Magneto. So Wolverine is the only real X-Man, I guess, still left at the mansion that can be in charge of all these kids. Jean and Storm are off investigating Nightcrawler, and they end up making friends with Nightcrawler, and he tells them he has no idea what was going on. It was just like a bad dream. He couldn't control himself. So he shows them this spot on his neck where apparently and this is where the movie gets really, really interesting. William Stryker has come back and is starting to control mutants through a little serum he's developed from his son, Jason, who was also a telepath, such as Xavier and such as Jean. We find out that Xavier tried to help Jason early on, and Jason thinks he did help, but apparently he caused his parents to have hallucinations, and he killed his own mother. And so William got to stop him, and he has kind of paralyzed him and made him mute in this wheelchair. And that's a little later on in the movie, and we'll get to that in a little bit. The point is, William Stryker is one of the best X-Men villains ever put to screen, because what he does the best, what he really does, is he just causes problems, like little problems here and there on his little mission. It's all about him for William Stryker. It's all about his mission, what he wants to accomplish. He breaks into Magneto's prison, controls him, makes him tell him everything about Cerebro, because he's going to build a second Cerebro to find all the mutants and eventually just kill every single one of them, because he really hates mutants. Charles and Scott go to visit Magneto later on, and it ends up Mystique has injected this guard with a bunch of iron, and so Magneto takes that iron out of his body, and you kind of see the blood just float there for a second, and then Magneto takes the iron and breaks out of his prison to go and stop William Stryker. He reveals this to Charles, who's been captured by Strykers. Charles and Scott have been captured. Stryker is going to use Xavier, Professor X, to power Cerebro, and he's going to use his son Jason to keep Professor X in check. He's going to use him to block him out of, getting out of the situation. Scott and Jean are bringing Nightcrawler back, and there's this really, really cool scene that happens right before. There is this raid on the mansion that William Stryker leads. This really, really cool scene, because it leads to, you find out that Wolverine and Stryker have a history together. They have a very long history before Wolverine lost his memory. And so Logan is very intrigued by this person. And there's this great moment where, this raid is happening, and it's a really cool scene. A lot of powers are being used, and it's very, very interesting to see how all these different X-Men defend themselves, especially Wolverine just going absolute berserk with his claws on all of these, on this entire raiding party, and just slicing dudes down. Logan and Stryker meet face to face, and he's just he's staring at him like, I know this guy, I know him from my past, I can't remember where. Bobby blocks the path between Logan and Stryker with a wall of ice, and he's like, come with us, we have to be safe, and we won't be safe if you're not with us. So he goes, and of course they take Scott's car, because who else's car would Logan take? They drive off to Bobby's house in Boston, where Storm and Jean also coincidentally happen to be. Bobby's parents find out that he's a mutant, and his mom is all like, have you tried not being a mutant? This mutant problem. Logan's like, what mutant problem? Because, it's part of who they are. So you can see how hearing that sort of thing would not only offend a mutant, but how that can allude to the whole issue of homosexuality in America as it stands today, or as it probably would have stood 2 years ago. That's what makes this movie so timeless and so great, is it carries with it just so many themes that are so present in today's world, but it did this all the way back in 2002, which is just fantastic. There's this really great scene where Logan's getting a beer before Bobby's family comes home, and he hears something behind him. He pulls out his claws, and it's a cat, and it starts licking his claws. It's pretty funny to see. So Bobby's family comes home, and they're discussing this whole mutant thing, and Bobby's little brother calls the cops because he doesn't like that his brother's a mutant. He doesn't like these mutants being in his house, so he calls the cops on them, and Pyro kind of freaks out, and he just he goes nuts. He won't get on the ground. He won't cooperate with the police, and he blasts like several of them. Rogue takes his powers and like puts out the fires that he started. So they all leave, and they get in the jet. They're just traveling home. There's these two fighter jets that come up alongside them, and they're ordering them to like descend because they're like, you like lower your altitude to 20,000 feet right now. We will give you 10 seconds to comply. So they're in some deep trouble, and you wonder why. And they pull back and get to see a cool display of Storm's powers as the X-Jet is flying and all these tornadoes are happening behind them. It ends up getting one of the pilots out of the picture, but the other pilot fires off 2 missiles. And those heat-seeking missiles keep traveling, so the X-Men think that they're safe, right? Well, they're not. You see Jean kind of take care of one of the missiles, but you see this fire in her eyes start up. You see this little spark in her powers, and that's when you start to realize, that's when it first hits. You're just like, oh, Phoenix Saga, they're gonna do the Phoenix Saga. They do, but they also don't. Eventually, that's another conversation for another time. She takes care of one of the missiles, but one of the missiles still hits the jet and it explodes out the back. Rogue gets like air suctioned out of the jet. Nightcrawler goes and gets her, brings her back in, and then you find out, as the jet is crashing, Magneto is controlling this jet and like taking care of all the metal and sealing it back up and everything, and he just puts it down right there. So Magneto and Mystique, they come to the X-Men and they're like, hey, we need your help. Stryker is building this machine that is going to knock out all of mutant kind if we do not stop him, but we have to do this together. So they go to this dam, which apparently is at Alkali Lake, because the base is underground, not on the base where Logan had been looking. So they go down and Mystique infiltrates this flooding tunnel, or whatever it's called, and they take advantage of all these soldiers and they infiltrate the dam. Well, during this whole thing, Jason has been controlling Charles and forcing him, through illusion, as a 6-year-old girl, to look for all the mutants. So he's looking for them, and Charles finds most of the mutants, and it starts to, like, kill them. Well, Magneto ends up taking the door off Cerebro. Mystique transforms herself into Stryker. It says, there's been a change of plan, now target the humans. And so the mutants are safe, but guess what? The humans aren't. During this, Scott shows up and attacks Jean, and Jean uses her power once again. There's more flames this time. She's more of a Phoenix than she was before, and she ends up like knocking Scott out and knocking Stryker's power out. So they go, and they're trying to get everybody out of there, and Jean realizes the professor's targeting everybody else. And they're going to get the professor, so there's this really cool scene where Nightcrawler takes Storm into Cerebro, and Storm makes this like really very cold air, which forces Jason to let go of his grasp on Xavier, because that dude is in like a nightgown. That guy is freezing right now, like something's falling off. So Nightcrawler gets Xavier out of there. They all like follow Wolverine out of the dam because the tunnel is like that they entered in is flooded. The dam ruptured during the battle with Jean and Scott, and so they leave the dam and discover that Pyro has gone with Magneto. He's now part of their side of this battle that's going on. They took both the choppers that were supposed to be there for the other part of the crew, because they're like, we did our job, now we're gonna leave. Because why not? We're villains after all. Rogue and Bobby, like, Rogue is kind of flying the jet, but she's really, really terrible at it, and she kind of crash lands where the other mutants are. Wolverine goes up to Stryker with this mutant kid in his arms, and Stryker's like, you think they can give you the answers? I can give you the answers. Remember how we were, remember how good we were together. And Wolverine's like, I'll take my chances with them because he doesn't need Stryker anymore. There's some really great character growth for Wolverine in this movie. And I don't want to spoil all of it because I want whoever watches this movie for the first time to really feel the effect of that growth after the first X-Men movie. And so he gets on the jet, but it ends up the jet is having a couple problems. Like, since it crash landed, some of the controls and stuff are just like kaput, and they lose power, and this dam is going to rupture. And you see this look in Jean's eyes, like she knows what's going on. She knows that that they will not get away in time unless she goes out there and stops the water. So she leaves the jet, like powers up the jet, won't let Nightcrawler come rescue her, won't let the ramp for the jet come down to come get her. She won't let anyone come get her. So she stops this water, and it kind of moves around her. And the visual effects, they're still kind of a bit dated, but it's pretty cool to see Jean just stop this river, like mid-flow, and it go around her. She's also controlling this jet. She raises it up. The jet works now. He's like, I know what I'm doing. This is the only way. And you see Scott just start to freak out. He's like, Jean, don't do this. Don't do this to me. And she's like, goodbye. And so she lifts up the jet, lets go of the water, boom, it rushes over her after you see her, like, arms go up in flames and stuff, and you're just like, I know what's coming, and I'm so excited. Even though you shouldn't have been. And they're safe. They're gone, the sun comes out, and you see Logan's face, she's just like, she's gone. And Scott's just like, no, don't say it. Don't you say it. She's not gone. Don't say it. Don't say that to me. And Logan's like, she's gone, she's gone, she's gone. And you see Scott just kind of collapse in Logan's arms. And that's one of the things I really love about this movie, is there's not just character growth for Logan or Storm or Jean. There's a lot of character growth for Scott, who's like, doesn't seem like he would be that large of a character. But he and Logan share this bond over Jean. After they get back to the mansion, Logan lets Scott know, he's like, she didn't make a choice, she chose you. But you can tell he's not telling him that because he's like, oh, she didn't choose me, so I'm just going to say this to spite you. He's not saying that. He's saying it because they both lost someone they loved, and he's saying that because Scott is his friend, and he wants to comfort him. You know, and he's distraught over this. So that's pretty much where the movie leaves off after that. It's a really sad moment, but it's also really bittersweet. And you hear Jean start reciting the monologue that Xavier was reciting at the beginning of the first movie. And you see the camera pan over the river, you see this very small shape begin to take form. And when you see the shape fully form, that's when it cuts to the credits. But that shape was the Phoenix. So everybody was excited to see the Phoenix Saga in X-Men 3, and we'll talk more about X-Men 3 next time. Guys, I loved X-Men 2. I love X-Men United. It's one of my favorite superhero movies ever. It's one of the best superhero sequels ever, and I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. We'll talk about X-Men 3 next time, and I can't promise that I will get to every single review before X-Men Apocalypse releases, but I can promise that I will do all of them, including X-Men Apocalypse, as soon as I possibly can. Again, thank you so much for watching. I'm the Friendly Film Fan, and I will see you next time.